This is a pro setup right here.
That's what I'm talking about.
Is this where you?
I'm just getting that shit on here too. What's up?
What does that say? Oh,
This?
I thought you said your shirt.
No. I was saying I'm keeping the compliment on there. No. What were you gonna ask?
I don't remember.
Driving R&D podcast episode 93. All right, we usually have the TV on there to make it less or like a background, but that's kind of funny. We're talking to nobody. This is Alex Caravan, VP of Business Ops, drinking a fresh Rainier.
Josh Hejka, Bebop's intern, pitcher for the New York Mets, various baseball fan and researcher and all that. And I'm drinking a Stuff Plus, Saris, West Coast DIPA edition.
Let's go. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, yeah.
This is the beer you gave me?
Yeah. Yeah, I ran over, bro. We're running like my best. I just default always
is this a
tap
prank
it.
show?
I just default always tap the top of the can. I've just been I've either been pranked or pranked too many people before. There's like one time, I mean, this is a dumb story already, but to kind of set the mood already on the podcast. There's one time, there's some random not in college. Me and my friend were like about to hand a beer can to one of our friends to like, we were doing like some stupid like some chug race or something, and he like went in the bathroom right before, and we literally, there's like a mattress on the ground. We just spent like 2 minutes just slamming the beer can into the mattress back and forth, and then just gave it to him when it came, and it just like absolutely exploded. Like,
Yeah, so we just got that on a light version of that right now.
Yeah. But anyways, dude, good to have you on. Started working out Driveline in what, January? Yeah, December, right?
Yeah, like December
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. And at the time you were training. I mean, you just got up to called up to AAA last year.
Yep.
And you're looking to start the season. Do you know where you're going to start the season? Before the TJ?
So yeah, I was probably going to start in either AA or AAA, depending on obviously how this off season went and how I progressed in my training. But yeah, was coding a little too much and ended up tearing my UCL. So got TJ last I think it was literally exactly a month ago today. So yeah, the full reconstruction and internal brace on top of it, so it should be doubly strong. No more carpal tunnel or anything like that from any of my coding.
Yeah, that's I run the interns in the ground. Multiple interns have had to get TJ after starting to work at Driveline now. So when did you suspect you might have to get it?
So I originally tore my UCL in 2020 over COVID. So I was throwing a bullpen, felt a pop, and at that time I think maybe I shouldn't say this, but I think it was the previous Mets ownership, and they didn't want to pay for me to get an MRI. So I ended up just not getting an MRI and tried to rehab it, and ended up rehabbing it, coming back. My velo was a little down, but I felt good and ended up gaining that velo back, and had a lot of success over these last 2 seasons. At the end of this last season, I started feeling it again in my elbow, and tried rehabbing it through it again, and just could never get back to 100%. So figured long-term outlook of my career is the best decision to get it taken care of and hopefully come back, throwing 4 miles an hour harder, which would still be slower than Tom Hackamer, but it's okay.
So were you always a sidearmer, or did you ever shift your arm slot like?
Yeah, so
growing up?
In high school, my high school coach, Tony DeMar, the legend, shout out, he basically came up to me, and so the previous season I'd played second base, and I think I set the state record for most errors in a season. I think it was probably like 30 plus, and he basically came up to me and he was like,
You're sidearmer.
like, you can't do that anymore. You can't hit. You weigh 140 pounds and you throw 75 miles an hour. If you want to play, you're going to have to like try something different. So he's like, what do you like to do best? Hitting, pitching, fielding, whatever. And I was like, I definitely prefer pitching. So he helped me along with our catcher at the time. We worked basically every weekend in the fall and lowered my arm slot. And it was a little bit of a rough start, actually. My first 2 appearances, I think I walked 10 or 12 guys total. Yeah. But after that, I ended up getting a spot start against the best school in the state, and had a really good start, and it was a good time after that. Haven't closed the yearbook, still talking about my high school glory days here, but and I ended up getting recruited to Johns Hopkins after that, which is Division III in Maryland. Played all 4 years there. Ended up graduating in 2019, played indie ball for a little bit, and then got signed from the Mets from there.
Nice. The only interaction I have with Johns Hopkins is, do you remember, or I mean, I don't know, do you remember is the right question, because like I don't know if they even still do this program. Did you ever hear like John Hopkins like Center for Talented Youth or something? You know what I'm talking about?
No, it doesn't sound familiar.
It was like a program I did in middle school. It was basically like I mean it was some nerdy ass shit. You had to like take the SAT in middle school to qualify, and it like John Hopkins like ran the program, but basically it was like taking like summer like intro college courses in like sort of like a boot camp type situation.
What was it called? The Center for.
I think it was called like John Hopkins Center for Talented Youth. And then
Trying to brag, bro?
I'm talented, dog. I used to be talented. Not bro. You want to hear what my SAT score was in 7th grade?
What was it?
No,
You're making me feel bad about myself, or
I don't know. I can't say. Well, first off, the SAT is just like completely. Oh, dude, this podcast's off to a bad start. I'm already flexing. You got me flexing hard on my middle school SAT scores. No, I know the SAT like biases I get a very. I'm biased to perform best on the SAT.
Okay.
Like, I'm just good at like the stuff they test on. Like I think even more so in the ACT. But I think in middle school I think it was like 1800 something, and then you had to like I think like
out of 1600. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, dude. They only let people over 1600 qualify in. But anyways, so you were sidearm though from the beginning.
Yeah,
when
I
you were
was
pitching.
Yep. So I got recruited to Hopkins as a sidearmer, and actually, yeah, most people only know Hopkins from the Step Brothers.
No, they know it from the Center for Talented Youth,
Yeah,
bro.
or
That's what I'm trying to talk about.
Yeah, so I got recruited to Hopkins as a sidearmer. They had actually had a sidearmer who had graduated, I think, like a year or two before I got there. So the coach, Bob Babb, another legend, shout out. He's been there like 40 years, and he was like, "Oh, we just had success with a sidearmer. Might as well like recruit another one."
Yeah.
And, ended up going there.
How's your arsenal changed over the years?
So in college, I was probably 95% fastballs and 5% sliders for balls. That's basically all my college coaches would call at the time, and I mean it worked, especially at the Division III level. There was, like you could get by with a decent fastball. In pro ball, I started developing a slider, and it wasn't great until this past year. I actually came to Driveline, worked with Langan.
Yeah.
We developed like this rising slider similar to Tyler Rogers, and I had a lot of success with it this last year. Got a lot more swings and misses. It felt like it was the first time in my life where I could throw a breaking ball and like be aggressive with it in advantage counts and like actually get swings and misses or like weak contact. And so I think that's been a huge change for my career. And I also added a cutter this last year.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, I know the sweeper was like the big trend last year, and then like the cutter this year. So I was a little ahead of the curve there.
Nice.
Yeah.
And TJ is going to be an even bigger trend an off season from now. So you're jumping in.
The bionic arm will hopefully get me closer to the Tom Hackemer school of 95 mile an hour sidearm fastballs.
So I was going to ask you. I mean, you mentioned working with Langan, who's our director of pitching now, and has worked with a bunch of big leaguers at this point. What's the perspective from your point of view, right? As someone who is pretty well ingrained with, I think, a lot of advanced analytics that are happening nowadays. Just comfortable with the technology readings. That again, this is I think people that train on Driveline or hear about Driveline maybe take it as an assumption that everyone's at least at that base level coming in. I don't think that's the case. I think there's plenty of people that are still kind of like, oh, that's weird. Oh, that's spin axis. Like, okay, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what's your perspective when you kind of come in with a game plan or have like a Driveline pitch design trainer devise a game plan for you? Like, what goes into that? What's the communication back and forth? Yeah, talk to me about that.
So I think there's two major aspects to this, and I think one's from like a understanding like pitching success and understanding pitching like evaluation side of things, and then the other side is like an actual development side of things. So I'm gonna speak to the first one first. A lot of organizations have moved away from evaluating guys on ERA, like how many for hitters it's
wins,
the same
baby.
thing, like batting average, wins, saves, like team, like maybe never mind, I'm not gonna name drop any organizations, but there's maybe some organizations that are still in that context, but I think it's important to understand why those metrics are used in the first place, right? So we've gone away from that. So if you look at that metrics such as FIP, Sierra, which honestly those are even probably a little outdated at this point. But why are those used, right? Like the reason ERA predictors such as FIP and Sierra are used are because they're better at predicting future ERA than ERA, right? So, if you understand what goes into that, you get a lot of strikeouts, you don't walk a lot of guys, and you don't give up a lot of home runs. Like even if your results are unlucky or like bad in one year, like you're on average, you're going to have more success in the future. And so I think understanding the type of results you want as a pitcher is extremely, extremely important. I'm sure there's an application on the hitting side where you talk about like hitting the ball hard, even if it's, right at guys or whatever, like you get unlucky in terms of that. But, understanding that like, and when you do give up balls in play, if those can be ground balls versus, hard hit fly balls, obviously that's better too. So understanding what you want to go after as a pitcher, like you want strikeouts, you don't want walks, you don't want home runs. And if you can control the balls in play, preferably ground balls versus fly balls. So I think understanding why that's important is the first step. And then taking that into the development side of things and understanding what pitches can I throw that'll help me
get there.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. So, and that's where things like stuff models come in, where you can understand how your pitch would play relative to the league context and say like, okay, in a vacuum, this pitch is like a 112 stuff plus, it's 12% better than an MLB average pitch. Yeah. And what that means is on average, you're going to get those optimal results. Maybe it's a little, I think stuff models are usually trained on like run value or something like that. So it's not exactly like Ks, walks, home runs, but if you can optimize your run value using those pitches, I think it's extremely important, and getting that instant feedback from TrackMan and then like running it through the stuff model and seeing like, okay, these specific metrics, like, okay, where can we make improvements? For example, my slider, I came in and it was crappy. It was slow. It didn't really move a lot. I had maybe negative 10 inches of sweep on my good ones, but it was so slow that it didn't really matter. It was like 72, 73. And obviously I'm a submariner, so it's a little bit slower to begin with. But to be a playable pitch at the professional level, it just has to be harder. And so that's something Langan and I talked about, is either making it a little harder or making it move more. Yeah. So we kind of played around with like an overhand sweeper grip. And if you think about an overhand sweeper grip, just rotated, that kind of leads to the rising effect of the slider that I was throwing. So we played around with that on the TrackMan, getting that instant feedback, trying different grips, and found something that worked. And I think that's a extremely valuable process, tying all those pieces together and understanding why it'll help you have success on the field.
When did you start getting a feel for it, right? Because in pitch design, we've traditionally had, you should throw your arsenal. The pitch design trainer gets a feel for what you actually throw. Then maybe next session you kind of start implementing or playing around with an active like game plan. Like I want to change my slider this way. Then like another pitch design session, like maybe like did the gains or not gains, but like did the change in shape of your pitches hold? Maybe you try it on live at bats, kind of come back. What was that process like for you when you start getting really comfortable with the overhand slider?
Yeah, so I in September, right after the season, that's when I came out to Driveline, and that's when I started working on it with Langan. And we had a pretty good feel for the shape and the like how it was coming out of my hand, like the grip. And throughout the offseason, I was working on it. And I noticed that it's a good point you brought up, because I noticed I didn't really maintain the shape super well. Like it was very hit or miss. There were times where I threw it really well, times where I didn't. And I actually played around with the grip a little bit, made a slight adjustment where I kept basically the same grip, but I added a thumb tuck. Yeah. And that allowed me to more consistently get the right shape. So basically just working on it through the off season. This might sound crazy, but I was actually long tossing my slider quite a bit, really exaggerating the effects of the movement and seeing how it would go. And
so someone's catching it, and then it just has a ton of late break, or
so it's pretty funny because you have to like it looks like it kind of like rises up and then it like falls back down because if it's coming up and then it's sorry if I got some feedback on the mic there, but it like rises up and then like falls back down. It's pretty funny, but same thing when I long toss my fastball. I have to start at like 30 feet up into the left of the guy I'm trying to throw to, and it just like boomerangs back down. So it's always interesting long tossing from the lower slot, but yeah. So throughout the off season, basically just working on it, and by the time the season came around, I had a pretty good feel for it.
So this last season, I was checking your Fangraphs before to make sure I kind of got this right, but you went high A to double A to triple A.
Yeah, so I started in high A, probably for the first 3 weeks of the season. Spent the majority of the season in double A, and then at the end of the year, I actually had 2 starts in triple A. I was kind of like a spot start and was supposed to finish the year there, but unfortunately had an injury, so I had to shut down the season a couple weeks early. But yeah, that's the progression from last year.
How is it like? Did you know coming in? Did you expect to be rising through the ranks, or was it like? I mean, I know you didn't give up a run in high A, right?
Yeah, I had a really good session. Like honestly, I think so. In 2021, I actually had a similar progression where I started the season in high A, but actually spent most of the year there. But when they needed a guy to fill a spot in AA and AAA, I got to fill spots there in 2021 as well. And after, going through that in 2021 and developing in the off season, I was a little mad that I started in high A, or not necessarily mad, but I felt like I had definitely, I could definitely go out there and out execute anybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where I was the first, month or two of the season, where I was just really trying to like out execute everybody because I knew I could compete. I felt similarly in AA. In AAA, obviously, if you look up my numbers, I think my ERA starts with it's double digits for sure. But I felt like I learned a lot from AAA pitching in AAA, and it's one of those levels where you have guys coming up from AA, but you also have guys coming back down from the major leagues. It's a big jump. It's probably the biggest jump, but I felt like I could compete, and I think it was a valuable experience. It gave me the confidence that when I do execute, I think I can get anybody out in the world, and I think that's where I'm kind of channeling that going forward.
One thing I wanted to ask you about is just general like minor league stories, like minor league grind stories. If you have any good ones to share, because I think one I remember I saw this. I don't know if you saw this in like random jokes or something. Like Max Engelbrecht was like posting some well-known person, like they just did a podcast on Twitter, and they were like, I guess he was listening to it, like I forget what industry this person worked in, but they were like well credentialed or whatever, and they were talking about the dynamics of money in sports, and I think they were talking about how ridiculous the gap was between minor and major league, except they had no idea what they were talking about, because they said something about like people in minor leagues making like $80K a year and how big of a gap that is with major league players, and like they make a fuck ton less than 80K. It's more like 8K. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just like people. I think people even that like have a general understanding of how big the gap is still underestimate it. So yeah, like from your point of view, yeah, give me some good minor league juice, or just how that grind feels firsthand.
Yeah, so I think 8K is probably more accurate than 80K is ridiculous. I don't think I've made money a single year of my career. Especially including the off season, the cost of off season training and stuff like that. They're like, my first year in pro ball, I'm staying at the Red Roof Inn. My roommates are cockroaches. Like literally there's cockroaches, climbing down the walls. I do have another roommate. And it's one of those things where you have this idea of pro ball growing up where you're like, oh, this is like the big time, right? Like this is where like, things get real, like you're treated like a professional, and then like you're staying at the Red Roof Inn, and like, there's, cockroaches climbing all over you while you're sleeping, and you're making, my first paycheck was I think $300 for the first 2 weeks of my professional career, and I was just like, what? Like this is real? Like this is what the pro grind is. Yeah.
The spread is like PB&J sandwiches.
Or did you even worse than that? Like, yeah, I mean, we could make there's probably, moldy bread and peanut butter and stuff at the field, but, we would get like, crappy salad. The food they would give us is probably 400 calories.
Yeah.
But like, so a lot of those issues arose in 2019. And I think through COVID and after that, things got a little bit better, and things are definitely trending in the right direction, especially with, the recent minor league unionization. But, I know guys who like, one of my good friends, he was in low A to start the year last year, so he had to get a lease in low A, and he was responsible for getting his own housing before the MLB instituted like their housing policy, and he got promoted to high A, and basically had to get a lease in Brooklyn. So he was in St. Lucie and Brooklyn, so he was simultaneously paying for a house in St. Lucie and Brooklyn. He tried subleasing the place in St. Lucie, but his lease had said that he wasn't allowed to sublet it. Yeah. So then he ended up getting in trouble for that, and so he's basically simultaneously paying 2 leases, having to deal with all that.
He's broke then.
Yeah, I mean, like
lease in Brooklyn, bro.
Yeah, it is a bit ridiculous, and I think, like I said, things have gotten a lot better, and will hopefully continue to get better. But luckily I've been supported by my parents and stuff like that. I haven't had to, or I got some help from my parents, so I've been really lucky in that aspect. So I haven't had to like suffer through a lot of the grind, but it's pretty ridiculous, some of the conditions that we've had to live.
Yeah. Most of I'm assuming most of transportation is like overnight buses, right? That's the most popular form of transportation.
Yeah. So pre-COVID, so this is actually, my first year of pro ball, I started out in Kingsport, Tennessee, and ended up getting promoted to Brooklyn, which was the high A, short season A at the time, and Kingsport was the low rookie ball or whatever. So I pitched once in Brooklyn. We take this road trip to Vermont. We're all on one bus. It's an overnight road trip. We finished the game before at like 11 p.m. Hop on the bus. It's like 7-hour road trip to Vermont. we're all on one bus. So like I'm trying to like sleep in my seat while like 300-pound, catcher sitting next to me, like snoring. I'm like, okay, this is not going to work. So I basically get no sleep. We get to the hotel at 6 a.m. and I'm like, okay, great. Like finally I'll get to maybe rest for a couple hours before the game. We have to go to the field. I lay down in bed. I get a call at 8 a.m. from our coach who was like, or from our manager. And he said, yeah, actually, they ran out of pitching in Kingsport. We need to send you back down there. So we need you to pack your bags and head to the airport. And I'm like, oh my God. End up heading to the airport, fly to Charlotte as the connection. It's like pouring rain there.
Yeah.
I end up missing my connection flight to Kingsport, Tennessee. And like I don't end up getting back to Kingsport until like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Have to pitch the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of that, it was just the travel was ridiculous. I think we would joke around that the farm director had it out for me. He obviously didn't, but it was just not the best situation to after I was so excited about getting promoted and having to go through that.
Like, did you get better at just being able to fall asleep like in uncomfortable spots?
Honestly, the noise canceling headphones have been huge. Which,
really?
I don't know, not to shill for like Apple or whatever, but
yeah.
The Max Scherzer 10s that Max Scherzer bought us when he was rehabbing for us, but so like just putting on noise canceling headphones and like putting on like white noise or something has been big.
I was about to say, I mean, a lot of the transportation rough situations I've been in, some of them have been self-imposed, like, or not self-imposed, but it's like nobody's like I'm trying to do all these things, and then you like sometimes you have to red eyes, do a lot of traveling, whatever. But I've gone a lot better over the years, dude. I used to, like, I think one of the first big international trips I took, like, right after college, I went with some college buddies to Iceland. I flew, it was like a 16-hour flight. Didn't sleep a wink on the plane, bro. And we got off. And it was like 4 a.m. there, and it was like, all right, like, let's just try to, like, ride the day out, and it was terrible. I've gone a lot better now. Like, now I can fall asleep on buses, even if, like, someone's, like, honestly, I think, like, again, this is like, I'm not saying I'm doing this on the regular, but like I've been in situations, especially recently, where I'll have like a larger person next to me on the bus, and then I'll literally just like it'll kind of help, dude. It'll just help for like this slight lane, and then I'll be able to pass out for a couple hours.
Rest your head on a shoulder,
Yeah. The other thing I was gonna ask you about minor league, like how's the camaraderie with people when they go through that, or it's like are people like kind of too focused on their own like path?
So that's actually a really interesting thing. So yeah, college is obviously super team focused, at least in my experience. Where everybody is like, even if you're not playing, you're like you're supporting your teammates. You're trying to help the team win. Like you're doing everything you can to like be a good teammate. Pro ball is obviously much more individualistic in the sense that like if I do badly, like I could get fired, right? Like I could get released. Like somebody else is going to take my job. So that's like a very interesting dynamic. But the camaraderie's going through those kind of tough times together, not to romanticize it, but it definitely did bring us together in some aspect, like having to suffer through that grind.
It's like frat hazing, basically.
I mean, yeah, it's from the $1 billion organization that's frat hazing us. And especially like, and you think about like, I'm a bullpen guy. Like, think about the bullpen guy. We spend so much time together every day. Like, we spend more time together like than we do playing. Like, we spend hours and hours and hours together in the bullpen talking about like what's going on, talking about our lives, and so that definitely brings us together. Yeah.
Are you able? This is kind of a random question, but I've noticed this a couple times with people that like pro guys that come in, or like when I say pro guys, I mean like people trying to break into the big leagues. There'll be people that perform pretty well at driveline or at like pro day or whatever, but that are bullpen guys, but often like need a good amount of time to warm up. This is what my first roommate when I moved up to Seattle. I hope we should shout out Robert Robbins. He pitched in the minors for the Cubs for a little bit, but really good guy, still good friend. I caught up with him recently, but he had like a 95, 96 fastball and a pretty nasty slider. But he needed like for pro day 2019, he got signed off that, and he was nasty in it. Like pitched like the best I've seen him pitch, and he was he spent like 40 minutes like warming up. And like he's told me like obviously like when you're pitching in a minor league game, like you don't always have like you sometimes have just like a quick heads up like get warm, whatever, time to go. And he's always needed to kind of get in the groove of things. I saw him pitch against a high school team, and first inning he gave up like a triple, another hard hit ball to center field, and then like next inning he like 3 Ks, so it's like, but obviously you can't afford to do that when you're like already like just one of many minor leaguers on a minor on a team, and it's already like a long shot to get to the next level. You just got to be ready to go. So how is that for you?
Yeah, it's like it's dealing with the constraints that you have to work in, right? Like that's the reality is like you have to adjust to like what's going to be expected of you, and if you need 40 minutes to warm up, like too bad, like figure it out, like figure out how to make that work. And I think a lot of that comes down to like understanding the game and understanding when you might be used, so you can kind of if you do need a little bit more time, then you can prepare just like earlier in the game when it feels like you might need to get going a little bit sooner. But it comes down to being professional.
What's your bullpen warm up?
I warm up really quickly, which I don't know if that's maybe a bad thing or whatever, but I get like I can probably throw like 5 pitches off the mound and be good to go.
Okay, that's tight.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's just, and I think that's been an advantage for me with the pitch clock also, where I adjusted really easily to that just because I'm so used to just getting back on the mound and going and not having to, some guys have to, the videos, like the 12-minute at bats that are actually like 6 pitches long or whatever. That's, I've just always been quick, like get back on the mound. So that's been an easy adjustment for me too.
Yeah. I was going to say, so given obviously your perspective on analytics and the technology and everything, like where do you think, so I mean, I'm assuming to kind of bear the lead, like I'm assuming you're going to be like, 99th percentile or like around like, your understanding of technology and analytics while still being an active player is going to be really, really high. Where do you think most people's like comprehension of TrackMan readings and like how that plays into things like ERA or FIP or swing and misses, like where do you think your contemporaries' understanding of that lies? And do you think it's changed over the years? Yeah.
So it's definitely changed a lot. So I think this is an interesting conversation. If you look at something like a sport like golf, baseball is almost known for at this point, like old retired players who constantly shit on the game, constantly don't understand a lot of the new breakthroughs in technology. And when you think about what's the difference between that and golf, where, my dad's getting lessons from a 80-year-old golf pro who's using the TrackMan and like teaching him all these like advanced metrics about golf.
You going to Topgolf tomorrow, by the way?
I am going to Topgolf. Let's go lefty swing. Like,
I was about to say, you're me at least one person I can outswing. I'm terrible at golf.
So but why is golf so much like more accessible or like accepted by the older generation? And I think it's because golf you can continue to play as you're in the older generation, right? If I'm an old retired golf pro, like I can still go out on the course and I can still like see how the technology can help me improve. Baseball, when you're done, like, I'm not going to like, maybe some guys play pickup or beer league softball or men's leagues or something like that, but it's never the same where, I can see that like, hitting 3 mile an hour or having a 3 miles an hour more of bat speed is going to like help me. So, I think that's the reality is when you're a player and you're actively in it, you begin to understand a lot of, how that stuff can really truly benefit you, how those tools can truly benefit you. And I think as orgs, so what I've realized in the Mets organization in the last few years, as they've really started to embrace technology and analytics, guys ask a ton of questions. Guys are super curious because they care about their careers. They're like taking ownership of their careers. They want to know why. They want to know how they can get better. And it's we talk amongst ourselves. We talk to the organization, our coaches, and guys are extremely curious about that. And sometimes maybe you don't have to give them all the information. Like you don't have to tell them like, oh, like this exact seam orientation causes this, wake to happen around the ball, which causes extra movement. You just got to tell them like, hey, like, if you cut the ball a little bit, like try throwing a 2-seam. Like sometimes you have to like explain it to them, or not. Like you have to have feel for how you explain it to them. And some guys don't want to overthink. Some guys like do worse when they're overthinking. But other guys, they want to know everything and they want to understand it all. And I think as it's become more and more accepted and more used by the organizations, guys are definitely embracing it. And I think they're recognizing how much of an impact this kind of stuff can have on their careers to help them improve.
Yeah. What about like working as an analyst, like the work you've done for us so far? Do you think that's like changed anything about your perspective, or like what other things have you learned through the last couple months?
I mean, a lot of the stuff I've been doing, for Driveline has been on the hitting side, which I've found really interesting because that's not something I've ever had to really know. So just getting to learn a lot about like, the big three for hitting and like understanding why those are important, like how those are applicable, how you can train those. I think that's been really interesting for me. And honestly, applying that to my own pitching and understanding, what hitters are trying to do, basically like what they're trying to do, what they're trying to get better at, and then I can take that information in and try to game plan against that myself. So I've really enjoyed that aspect of it, getting to understand like the hitting side of things. Yeah, for the most part, I think like that's like the newest thing that I've kind of interacted with or kind of come up with on the job so far.
Yeah.
You know, I've also with my rehab, I think it's been working a lot with Dylan and, you know, Sigmund and some of the other guys who are work at Driveline are interested in that. And, you know, seeing some of the work that Dean Jackson used to do with like the pulse driven return to throw, I think has been really cool to see. And I think that's something that, you know, I'm going to take ownership of and really do when I'm at my return to throw and trying to, you know, really take a data. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So take that approach to it, and I think that's going to be very valuable for me too.
So what's your day-to-day rehab look like right now?
So I can't really do anything with my right hand, which is a little bit annoying. I, you know, got a little bit more extension today.
Yeah. Easy, bro.
I know. I didn't even realize this. I was doing like a dry rep throw earlier, and I luckily this doesn't let me get into valgus, but Dylan was like, "What are you doing? Like you're doing dry reps," and I'm like, "Oh shit." But I can do a lot of left arm stuff and a lot of lower half stuff. And I saw you copying my lift in the weight room earlier. You know, I was doing my forward lunges, and you were like, oh yeah, like got to one up you and do like 4 times the weight as you.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say that part. I'm glad you said that part. No. So what do you think your schedule is return to throw like when you think when are you expecting to start throwing lightly? Do you kind of have an idea? Is that?
I think it's probably 4 or 5 months in. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
I think a lot of the approach we're taking is kind of less based on the calendar and more so asking my body questions. Like I've heard someone else say it like this, like asking my body questions and like seeing how it answers. And when my body's ready to do something, we'll do it. And when it's not ready to do something, we'll back off. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. I guess I was gonna say from a advanced scouting point of view, right? Like that's part of the work you've been doing when you haven't been sidelined by the heavy drugs you had to take during TJ. So what do you think are advantages that people might not realize? I guess pun intended, even though I didn't realize until I'm saying it now. But like, what do you think are pros to our advantage plan that might not be super clear to the public, right? And for our advantage plan, that's our year-round service. We provide mostly, I mean, it's a little bit pricier. So a lot of our clients are MLB players or minor league players that are close to breaking in. And we provide obviously training when you're in gym, assessments, scouting reports, advanced reports, some of the one shooter stuff you've developed.
Yep.
Yeah. What are things we provide that you think might not be as obvious to the casual bystander?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just from my like experience with the teams, a lot of the times, you know, and maybe this changes organization to organization, but a lot of the times, like those scouting reports that you're talking about. Yeah. Aren't very individualized. They're not they're more general, saying like this is this guy's tendencies, this is what he tends to do. And I think there's a lot to be said for digging down and saying like, okay, if I'm a hitter and I'm facing this pitcher, I don't really care how he throws. So if I'm a right-handed hitter, I don't really care how he throws to lefties. I don't really care how he throws if I'm like a righty power guy. Yeah. I don't really care how he throws to like the righty slap hitters, right? Like I want to know how he's doing or how he's approaching facing hitters like me. Yeah. Whether that's pitch mix, pitch mix, like pitch location, stuff like that, and like understanding exactly the approach the guy's using, you know, to face me. If I'm a pitcher, it's the same thing, right? Like for me, I'm a submarine pitcher. I don't really care how, you know, the hitter I'm facing, I don't really care how he's, you know, facing a normal traditional over the top right-handed pitcher. Like that does not, and that's a lot of the times what we get with scouting reports is like, okay, this is a generic scouting report. Like this is how he faces right-handed pitchers. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't really help me. My specific pitch mix is much different than you know Justin Verlander's specific pitch mix. You know, obviously outside of the 20 miles an hour difference, but like the like how the pitch shapes, like all of that is extremely important. And you know, I think that's something that we can like that I think is really cool that we offer is the more individualization of it, where the you know it's more based on who you are as a player versus like who they are as a player. And I think that's an interesting difference where it's like where you want to pitch to your strengths, you want to pitch to like what's important to you, and like not necessarily based on like the hitter generically as a person. And so I found that super valuable. That's something I've been even thinking about in my own career, like before I discovered like the driveline and driveline advantage plan and stuff like that, because those scouting reports are so generic that we get in And I think the one thing I just kind of used as a heuristic is like, okay, is this guy like a flat path guy or like a steep path guy?
Yeah.
Like I would, kind of change how I pitch a guy based on that. And that's basically like I would just have to like do my own research on that and like find like, okay, what's his home run percentage, what's his ground ball percentage, and like figure kind of like guess what his bat path is.
Yeah.
But I think having that done more systematically and like more quantitatively is very valuable.
Yeah. Also, I was going to ask you, I just remembered that you're from Michigan now, even though we were talking about it a couple months ago when I went to winning Michigan. What's your, I mean, what's your favorite sports team?
Yeah, this is inspired by Was, who was on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Wearing his Red Wings jersey. I figured I had to rep Detroit too. Just got the old Pistons hoodie from the Bad Boys era here. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm a Detroit fan for everything. It's kind of tough right now. Though the Lions are looking good.
Are they? I haven't followed football in a while.
Yeah, got a new coach. He's an electric factory. And,
how did they do last year?
They were 9-8, so that was like they weren't expected to do great, but they ended up winning record.
I mean, Red Wings are in a playoff spot now, I think, right?
Yeah, they've been playing really well too. The Wings, yeah. And Tigers are just the Tigers, and they don't spend money and they don't develop guys, and of course that's why they are where they are, and and then the Pistons are also in a similar
Pistons
position.
Are rough right now.
Yeah.
Are they the like are they the worst seed right now or worst record?
It's probably close, yeah. So tank for Wembanyama.
Yeah. I was about to say they should have the worst record. Man, yeah, the Pistons. I mean, that 04 run is epic. I mean, that's got to be one of like the biggest finals upset. I feel like.
I think that might be the only team in NBA history to win a championship without a MVP, something like that, or like a current, future.
Without an MVP, without like an all-star, basically.
Yeah,
that video or something.
It was crazy. It was just like everyone was solid. Chauncey and Rick Hamilton and
Chauncey,
Ben Wallace.
Yeah. Rashid and Tayshaun Prince.
That was the big five right there. Yeah.
Dude, I really like to. I mean, like I don't really care as much. So context. I'm a Sacramento Kings fan. So also
light
rough.
The beam.
What's up?
Light the beam.
Yeah. Rough. Pretty much 20 years at this point. So I was like a Lakers hater growing up, right? And now it's like I have appreciation for those teams. Like I don't actually hold any resentment. I was actually bummed when Kobe died. I mean, not that I wouldn't. Okay, not that I'm gonna be bummed about it, but I'm just saying, like, I actually felt like really sad. But
I think that's an interesting aspect. Sorry to interrupt, but like that's an interesting aspect that perspective that I've gained since playing pro ball is like the teams don't really matter, right? Like these players aren't necessarily choosing to go to these teams because they're like, oh, I'm a Yankees fan, I hate the Red Sox. It's like, well, they're paying the bills and like So I've gained a deeper appreciation for like like the Tom Brady's and the Nick Sabans who are like usually people are like, oh, I hate them because they're so successful, and then as a player you're like, oh wow, like I appreciate them because like they they put in the work, they're really successful, and I think that's like an interesting perspective change that I've had. It's less team focused, more player focused.
Yeah, same with me. But like again, I'm talking years before his death, but like I used to like hate Kobe, and then like later, especially like coming back from, especially like the year before he tore his Achilles, and then years after, I just like started having a way bigger appreciation for like his legacy and everything. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, one thing that resonates with me from that series, I read Phil Jackson's book that he wrote about the season. It was called like The Last Season or something. And because he thought he was going to retire and never come back from coaching. Obviously he did. But one tidbit I remember from his and who knows how much Phil Jackson just wrote the memoirs to like annoy Kobe or whatever or Jeannie Buss or whatever. But there's one story I think going into game 2 because the Lakers had Gary Payton and Karl Malone, fucking the most Hall of Famer lineup ever. Like it was Shaq, like that, Shaq, Kobe, Gary Payton, Karl Malone, and I think their small forward is like Devin George or something, or like whatever. The small forward is like a, just replaceable wing basically with those four. But and obviously Gary Payton was like old, but still like a semi-elite defender, and you're just getting shredded by Chauncey. And Phil Jackson tells a story like before game 2 or game 3 that Kobe just like volunteers to guard Chauncey like right before the game or like in a huddle, and like Phil Jackson's like, no, that's stupid. Like, no, I don't want you guarding the point guard. And then like after that, but like nobody said anything. And after that, like Kobe went up to him and it's like, oh, I just want to see if like Gary was like punked, because like otherwise I was expecting him like if he was in it, he would have been like, no, I got him. What are you talking about? But he didn't say anything. He just like let Kobe volunteer to guard him. So anyways, 04 Pistons got the Lakers number, baby.
Yeah, that was like a legendary team growing up. That's when I like started liking basketball and stuff. Yeah, Detroit, the state of Detroit sports is in disarray at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah. When were you last in Michigan?
So I was there right before my surgery. So I went home like right before my surgery, got to see my family a little bit, and yeah, so I wasn't there for super long, but
Yeah. But your family lives like in Detroit or Detroit suburbs?
yeah. So Detroit, like it's technically Metro Detroit, Detroit suburbs.
What town is it?
So my dad lives in Dearborn, my mom lives in Plymouth, and my grandma lives in Westland. And then some of my other family members live in like Canton, Plymouth area too. So
Okay, because I was telling you that the only spot I'd been at was Shelby Township.
yeah, I think that's a little bit north of us.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Good to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. We'll chop it up during Top Golf, and we'll see how many minor league players are inspired to show up for pitch design after that glowing endorsement of
just don't throw an 84 mile an hour fastball right down the middle to Franchy Cordero.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna plug that too. Yeah. Okay. Give me a quick story on that.
Yeah. First time ever pitching in AAA, I was like, okay, like this guy Franchy Cordero, whoever, like I don't care. He's like, I'm behind him 3-0, and I'm like, I don't want to walk him. I'll probably just like, I'll just fill up the zone with my fastball and try to get back in the count. 3-1, fastball right down the middle. He takes it. Great. 3-0, fastball right down the middle. He takes it. Great. 3-1, try to throw the exact same pitch, 84.1 miles an hour. He turns it around at 116 at a 33. I think the estimated distance was literally like 500 feet. It was a top 5 hardest hit ball in all of minor league baseball that year. Tristan Casas did something similar to me, so we don't have to talk about it. Those big lefty those big lefty Red Sox players, it's okay.
I mean, the moment you hit it, you knew it was gone.
Yeah, there's a video. The video exists, and I like turn around and I just like am watching it, and there's this guy in the background, and he just like he's watching it, and he just like puts his hands on his head, like, oh my god. Yeah, they don't really do that in Division III baseball, so I wasn't really prepared for that. It's okay.
All right, cheers.
Thanks, Cara.
Peace.